Chapter 4. The days that followed were a masterclass in duality. To the world, I was Emma Davenport, dutifully painting birch trees onto canvas flats and nailing together a props over. But on the inside, I was a co-conspirator, a keeper of the crown's biggest secret. Every conversation with Alex, and there were many, as we now sought each other out with an unspoken magnetism, was layered with double meanings. A comment about his strict father suddenly meant the king. A complaint about having to visit relatives over the holiday took on the gravity of a state visit. Our work on the set became our sanctuary. In the vast, dusty quiet of the auditorium, we could almost be normal. He'd tell me stories, carefully edited for public consumption, about learning to fence in a big, drafty house, or spending summers in a cottage by the sea in Scotland. I, in turn, found myself opening up about the suffocating pressure of being the other Davenport twin. It's like I'm the understudy for a role I never wanted, I confessed one afternoon, dabbing white paint onto a window frame to simulate snow. Sophia gets the spotlight. I get the script, the props, and the light board. I'm essential, but invisible. Alex stopped what he was doing, assembling a small wooden bench. He looked at me, his gray eyes serious, and for a second, the prince was gone, replaced by a boy who understood. I know what it's like to be a symbol instead of a person, he said quietly. To have your entire life mapped out based on your birth order. My brother, Arthur, is the spare. He gets to join the Royal Air Force, travel incognito, marry for love if he's lucky. I get the throne. He said the last words with a profound weariness that ached in my own chest. So you're the golden child, I mused. And I'm the spare. He offered a small, crooked smile. I suppose so. It seems neither position is what it's cracked up to be. This new intimacy was intoxicating but terrifying. At school, I was on high alert. I noticed things I hadn't before. The two men who were always in a boring black sedan in the student parking lot, they weren't teachers. They were his protection detail. The way Alex's eyes would subtly scan a room when he entered, the faint scar above his eyebrow I'd never seen, the fact that he never, ever used a school computer. The costume of Alexander and Marie was flawless, but now I could see the seams. Chloe, of course, noticed the change in me. You and the new guy are practically joined at the hip, she said, poking me as we sat in the library. But you look like you're constantly waiting for a piano to fall on your head. Spill it, Davenport. What's his deal? Is he in a cult? Is he secretly a musical prodigy? Is he Canadian? He's just complicated, I'd say, the understatement of the century. The first real threat to our fragile bubble came, predictably, from Sophia. She couldn't stand that I had something she didn't, especially when that something was the handsome, enigmatic transfer student everyone was talking about. She started making excuses to show up at the auditorium. Just wanted to see the progress, she'd say, her eyes not on the set, but on Alex. Wow, Em. It's looking even more rustic. She'd bat her eyelashes at Alex. You must be so bored, doing all this manual labor. The team is having a bonfire on Saturday if you want to come. You know, do something fun. Thanks, Sophia, but we have a deadline, Alex would say politely, his Alex persona snapping perfectly into place. He was charming, but coolly distant, a skill I now realized was honed over a lifetime of public appearances. His disinterest only seemed to fuel her determination. One evening, about a week after his confession, we were working late. We had ordered a pizza and were eating it on the stage floor, cross-legged amidst the paint cans. We were laughing about a particularly disastrous rehearsal story when a floorboard creaked near the wings. We both froze. Alex's posture changed instantly, his back straightening, his body tensing. It was the instinct of a man trained to detect threats. Sophia stepped out from the shadows, a triumphant, cat-like grin on her face. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt your little pizza party. Soph, what are you doing here? I asked, my heart hammering. How much had she heard? I left my pom-poms in my locker. Just getting them. Her excuse was flimsy, her gaze sharp and analytical. Her eyes swept over the scene, the two of us, sitting close, sharing a box of pepperoni. Then her gaze landed on Alex's wrist. He always wore a simple, black sports watch. But he'd taken it off to wash paint from his hands, and hadn't put it back on yet. Lying on the dusty floor beside him was his other watch, the one he must have been wearing before school. It was a classic, understated timepiece with a thin leather band. What Sophia's eagle eyes saw, however, wasn't the watch itself, but the silver cufflinks he'd left beside it, which he'd taken off when changing into a t-shirt for work. They were simple, elegant squares of polished silver. Oh, those are nice, Sophia said, sauntering over. Before Alex could react, she bent down and gracefully plucked one of the cufflinks from the floor. My dad would love these. Where'd you get them? Alex went unnervingly still. They were a gift, he said, his voice level, but I could feel the tension radiating off him. Sophia held it up to the dim ghost light, turning it over in her fingers. Is this a little crown? She asked, squinting. How cute. A little king for a day. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just a crown. It was St. Edward's crown, the official coronation crown, rendered in microscopic detail. An emblem no one in Northwood, Ohio, would ever recognize. No one, except someone who was suddenly very, very suspicious and had a smartphone in their pocket. It's a family crest, Alex said smoothly, rising to his feet and gently taking the cufflink from her grasp. His movement was fluid and disarming, a maneuver of pure social grace. My grandfather's company had a logo like a crown. A bit pretentious, if you ask me. Sophia's smile didn't falter, but her eyes narrowed with a speculative gleam. Right, a family crest. She looked from him to me, a sudden, sharp understanding dawning in her expression. It wasn't that she knew the truth. But she knew, with absolute certainty, that there was a truth to be found. She had a thread, and I knew my sister. She would pull it until everything unraveled. Well, I'll let you two get back to this, she said, gesturing to the set with a dismissive wave. See you at home, Emma. She walked away, her ponytail swinging with purpose. The auditorium was once again silent, but our sanctuary had been breached. The bubble was broken. Alex stood there, the cufflink clutched in his fist. He looked at me, the mask of Alex completely gone. All I saw was the cornered prince, the future king, whose final year of freedom was now in the hands of the one person I could never control, my sister. For a long moment after she was gone, neither of us moved. The silence she left behind was heavy and suffocating, laced with the sharp, metallic tang of fear. The half-eaten pizza on the floor between us seemed like an artifact from a different, more careless lifetime. She knows, I finally whispered, the words feeling like sandpaper in my throat. Alex slowly uncurled his fist, staring at the small, silver crown in his palm. The ghost light cast long shadows across his face, carving out the sharp lines of his jaw and the sudden, weary age in his eyes. He wasn't Alex, the high school student, anymore. He was Prince Alexander, exposed. She doesn't know, he corrected, his voice dangerously quiet. She suspects. Which might be worse. He slipped the cufflink into his jeans pocket and methodically began to gather our trash, his movements precise and controlled, as if tidiness could somehow contain the chaos Sophia had unleashed. She'll look for me now. Not for Alexander and Marie. For a loose thread. A royal crest. She'll start connecting dots I didn't even know were there. I felt a surge of protective fury aimed squarely at my own twin. I'll talk to her. I'll tell her she's crazy, that she's just trying to stir up trouble. He stopped and looked at me, a flicker of that wry, humorless smile returning. And that will work, will it? Telling Sophia Davenport she's wrong? He was right. Denial would be like gasoline on a fire for her. It would only confirm her suspicions and make her dig deeper. My stomach churned with a nauseating mix of guilt and dread. This was my world, my family, my sister who was about to tear his fragile freedom to shreds. I'm sorry, I said, my voice thick. This is my fault. No, Emma. He stepped closer, his voice softening. It's mine. I was careless. I got comfortable. He looked around the dusty stage, at our half-finished birch trees and the prop bench. I forgot I was on a stage. The following week was a study in psychological warfare. Sophia played her part to perfection. At home, she was a smiling assassin. Anything interesting happens at rehearsal, she'd ask over dinner, innocently stabbing a piece of chicken, while her eyes bored into mine. Meet anyone important? My parents, oblivious, would just carry on. So glad you're enjoying the play, honey, Mom would say. It's good you have a friend like Alex. One night, I walked past her bedroom and saw her laptop screen through the crack in the door. She was scrolling through a tabloid website, the kind with splashy headlines and grainy photos of European royalty. The headline read, "Where is the Wandering Prince? Heir to British throne remains MIA during gap year." My heart stopped. She wasn't just pulling a thread. She was weaving a net. My time with Alex became charged with a new, frantic energy. Our sanctuary was no longer safe. We started meeting in the library's forgotten archives or taking long walks in the park on the other side of town, always aware of the black sedan that kept a respectful, but constant, distance. The ease between us was replaced by a low-grade hum of anxiety. What happens if she figures it out? I asked him one afternoon as we sat on a bench overlooking the duck pond. What's the protocol? He tossed a piece of bread crust to a particularly aggressive goose. There's a number I call. A car arrives. Alexander and Marie ceases to exist. He's pulled from the school records due to a family emergency. The men in the sedan stop being discreet. And I will go back. Back to the palace. He shook his head, his gaze fixed on the water. Back to being a symbol. Back to handshakes and waving and having my every move scheduled and scrutinized. The end of the experiment. The end of this. He looked at me then, and the unspoken meaning hung in the air between us. The end of us. The thought was a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. In just a few short weeks, his presence had become a vital part of my landscape. He was the one person who saw me, Emma, not as Sophia's shadow, but as a co-conspirator, a friend. The idea of him vanishing, of our shared world dissolving overnight, was unbearable. The breaking point came on a Friday night. I was in my room, trying to memorize lines for a test, when Sophia walked in without knocking and shut the door behind her. She was holding her phone, a look of triumphant finality on her face. I was wrong, she said, her voice eerily calm. I looked up confused. What are you talking about? The cufflink. You said it was his grandfather's company logo. A bit pretentious, he said. She walked over and stood in front of my desk, blocking my escape. I couldn't find a company with that logo anywhere. So I started thinking, what else has a crown like that? A very specific crown. She turned her phone around. The screen showed a high-resolution photo. It was an official portrait of the British royal family. There was King Edward, Queen Charlotte, a younger brother in a military uniform, and standing beside the throne, looking impossibly young and uncomfortable in a suit, was Prince Alexander. My Alex. My mouth went dry. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. He looks a little different without the cheap dye job and the American accent he's practicing, doesn't he? Sophia continued, her voice dripping with condescending sweetness. Alexander Anne Marie, Crown Prince of the United Kingdom, hiding out in Northwood, Ohio, and building sets for the high school drama club. I stared at the screen, then at her face. There was no doubt in her eyes. It was over. What do you want, Sophia? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Her smile was sharp and predatory. Oh, I'm so hurt. You think I'd do something to hurt your little friend? She sat on the edge of my bed, making herself comfortable. I just want to be included. I'm tired of being kept in the dark. You have this massive, insane secret, and you didn't tell me. Your own sister. It wasn't my secret to tell. Well, it is now, she countered smoothly. And I think it's time for some changes. First of all, I want to meet him. The real him. No more of this Alex from Cleveland nonsense. She leaned forward, her eyes glittering. And second, you're going to get me an introduction. I've always thought I'd look good in a tiara. I stared at her, horrified. This was worse than a public expose. This was a hostage situation. She didn't want to blow his cover. She wanted to leverage it. She wanted in. She saw Alex not as a person, but as the ultimate prize, the final, irrefutable proof that she was the golden child, destined for a life far grander than mine. No, I said, finding my voice. Sophia's smile vanished. Excuse me? No. I'm not going to let you use him like some kind of social climbing lottery ticket. She stood up, her face hardening. You don't have a choice, Emma. Either you bring me into your little secret circle, or everyone finds out. The school paper. The local news. I can have a camera crew on our front lawn by morning. Imagine the headline, The Prince and the Prop Builder. It's your call. Protect him by including me, or watch his whole world burn, because you wanted to keep him all to yourself. She held out her phone, the picture of the royal family glowing like a threat. My secret keeper. My friend. My prince. His last year of freedom. His one request was for anonymity. And my sister was holding a match, ready to light the fuse.